Fabulous, fabulous. Okay, and my friend and co-host Nullus, how are you, sir? Nullus is
Oops,
on mute. Hey, buddy. Welcome
I
back.
forgot to take it off. Uh, Hi, Donald, and hello, Luke. So hard,
Yes.
and hello to the audience.
Yes, yes. So welcome back. It's good to be back. I'll just give a tiny little Easter egg for our audience. The Luke and I had the pleasure of meeting each other not long ago, and that was totally awesome, dude. So we relate a lot on so many different points: martial arts, music, just so many things. And I can tell you after meeting Luke, that dude is just a giant bear. You know, he's just a wonderful guy with golden heart, a smile that could light up the sky. He's just a fabulous human being. And I was extremely blown away at his musical talent. The dude is really pro level at what he does. So it's great to have you, Luke. Maybe you could kind of tell the audience a little bit about your music for starters and just kick it off from there.
Heck yeah, thanks. I Well, and I could say a lot of those things about you too, Donald. Amazing singing voice and musicianship on your part as well. It was really fun to get a chance to jam with you. So, but as far as Imminent Reign, I I don't know. I'm basically a rock musician,
Mm.
and I fell in love with metal
Mm.
in my 30s, actually, long after it had kind of, the grunge thing had happened, and I was like super disappointed by that because I had just spent like 10 years learning to shred, and then all of a sudden it was irrelevant. But yeah,
And
I
it
fell in
takes
love with
10 years.
metal again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
I
takes
fell
10
in
years.
love with metal again after that, and ironically, watching Tenacious D is what did it for me. but
The
but
pick.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the pick of destiny. Yeah, totally. And I also watched this really good documentary by Sam Dunn. It was called Metal: A Headbanger's Journey.
Hmm.
And when I watched that, I just realized, holy cow, these are my people.
Oh,
Like, there's culturally, I come from a working class family,
sure.
and the other thing is that I really like about metal is I played in band throughout, from grade school up through college,
Hmm.
playing trumpet.
Hmm.
And I developed a love of the classics, classical music. And then also being a church musician for a while, getting exposed to choral music and organ counterpoint kind of pieces like Bach and so on and so forth. I just really fell in love with that aesthetic.
Huh.
And I really got into like symphonic metal because I just feel like metal is kind of like it really melds well with classical music, probably because it comes from the same biospirit.
Totally, totally.
And
Could you give us an example of symphonic metal?
oh, sure, my favorite band, probably for a long time now, is Camelot. But mainly when they had Roy Khan as their singer. The new singer's okay, but I really like a lot of that older stuff. He's got a little bit lower voice, so it's easier for me to sing along with it.
Okay.
I also really like there's another group that I really dig. They're kind of like nerd version of symphonic metal, Rhapsody, and they've also gone by the name Rhapsody of Fire.
Mm.
And those guys are really amazing. They do these albums that tell like these full-on fantasy stories and whatnot.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
So,
yeah, go ahead.
what is it about metal that attracted you? I mean, is it a personality type? Is it a culture? Is it a value system? Is it just the music and the energy? What's
Oh
the...
yeah, it's I like the rebelliousness of it,
Okay.
and that sounds weird, for someone in our movement to think that way. But I actually kind of came to the struggle out of rebellion
Mm.
because I felt like I had been kind of nerfed uh, by the way that I was raised and all the things that I was brought up to believe that turned out not to be true. So,
Right. So
uh,
for our audience, though, nerfed is a gamer lingo for to become soft, to kind of
yeah,
like lose your power, like a Nerf football, for example. It's, but go on.
Yeah, so there was that element. I love metal has a very martial spirit to it. It's easy to lift weights when you're listening to metal, and I'm a martial arts guy, and
Yeah.
I've always liked how it sucks to get punched in the face, but it does feel good to return the favor, you know.
I can attest. I can remember
And
when.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I remember when my teacher first threw a flying kick at my head, and I thought like, oh, so we're at that level now. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged sword for sure, but I just love that martial energy that metal has, and I feel like it's particularly good for men in our movement to get exposed to a bit of it and just to get the adrenals going and just have a little bit more aggression, just because we've all been brought up
Yeah.
to be soft and obedient, and obedience would be great if our leaders had our best interests in mind, but I just don't feel that they do these days. So
For sure not. I constantly say that our people and our movement have to learn to defend themselves, to get armed, and our men and our women should know some basic self-defense. I think it's just a normal skill and an important skill, especially for our people. So that's a more chance for me to ring that bell and hammer people on the head. Take some classes, get some basic skills. Don't let people take advantage of you. So we'll segue a tiny bit into your martial arts background. What have you studied?
well, I did probably about a decade's worth of Taekwondo, both kind of traditional and then Olympic style. And then I moved into ninjutsu for a few years. And then from there, I realized I really liked the kicking thing. So I got even more into Korean martial arts. I took a martial art called Farang Musul, which is kind of it's a Hwarangdo derivative. Hwarangdo is very similar to Hapkido, which is the martial art used in the Billy Jack movies. It has the awesome kicking, but it also has throws and joint locks and weapons, and it was really cool. Then I ended up getting hip replacements because I overdid the kicking thing, and so now I'm more into like Chinese and Filipino arts. Not all of them, but just the ones that feel more natural. And
for example,
I really like Wing Chun
yeah,
and Hung Gar, and I really dig Arnis and Kali.
Cool.
And then whatever Western arts I can get away with incorporating. My great grandpa was actually a boxing coach, and so I definitely have a love of Western martial arts. And just the way one of my teachers put it to me, he said, boxing is probably the best way to fight with your hands, because if there were a better way than these athletes who get paid millions of dollars to beat someone up with their hands in the ring, they'd be using praying mantis kung fu or whatever. Of course, the gloves make a huge difference. Like you can't trap when you've got boxing gloves, for instance. But
sure, yeah, that's wild. So you've got it in your family, you got it in your blood, I guess, right? So
I feel like it a little bit, at least the coaching part.
Well, one thing I want to say is that having met you and talked with you about it, what I love about you is that you have a true martial arts spirit, in that you're very, very humble about it. You're very playful. You're very inquisitive. You don't have this sense of like, oh, I know everything, I don't need to know anything more. You're always wanting to learn more. And that's really more of the attitude that we should see from people in martial arts, instead of the kind of the cocky, bullish mentality, which is usually kind of, I don't know, adolescent in some way. So that's
totally.
That's a great thing to see. So
I've gotten my butt kicked a lot. That's why. It helps, to be around people that are better than you, because then it gives you a better sense of like where you actually stand in the pecking order.
And it's also like just for life, and even in the movement, we want to associate ourselves with people who are, really bright and have really good character and are accomplishing things. If we're striving in our movement for white well-being, then surround yourself with positive people. There tends to be, we kind of have a bit of a history of just going over the same old toxic news, and how deep can we interpret the history and the politics and all this stuff. And that's important, but it's sort of just half of the deal. The other half is, how do we strategize to get out of this problem? And you got to diagnose the disease before you can create a cure, but you have to administer the cure and then carry on. So I hope that the movement is changing, and I hope that what we're doing here on Imperium Art is helping in some way by introducing people like yourself. So let's get back to the music a bit then. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I kind of cut you off. We segued into Kung Fu and.
Oh yeah, no, it's easy to do. So as far as music goes, I just really, when I fell in love with metal, and I was also kind of already in love with classical music, from school and from the church. I realized that there's something very special about European music that comes from European, people of European ancestry.
Sure, for sure.
And I just feel that in our modern day times, that kind of element, that kind of biospirit in music has kind of been suppressed and marginalized.
Yeah.
And I just felt like really called, if you will, to be a part of the solution and to try to preserve and promote and share my love of our ethnicity's, cultural music in the way that I feel best suited. And since I'm an electric guitar player, it just made sense to get into metal. And yeah, metal just lends itself a little bit more to classical influence as well. There's
the heart of the question. I need to ask you this question. Do you, like, as somebody who writes and performs heavy metal music, is there what music theory is? It's how to put together songs and what all the scales and the key signatures, etc. So is there some kind of overlap, or like, would you say that heavy metal actually draws from classical music?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's, all the same scales, and well, at least the metal that I listen to does. I listen to a lot of Yngwie Malmsteen and, Joe Satriani. And, so in my opinion, it does. I think it also draws heavily from European folk music.
Oh, how so?
Well, for instance, you have a lot of these, a lot of metal songs are in either like 6/8 or 12/8, where there's a triplet feel. And that has definitely been used as a pretty huge common device in a lot of Celtic music that I've noticed.
Right.
And also the some of the chord progressions, like the flat 6, flat 7, 1 chord progression, is actually pretty common in European folk music as well. So like, you can listen to Iron Maiden, and as you're listening to Rime of the Ancient Mariner, if you were to put on like a recording of, some Irish jigs or reels or something like that, it would be pretty similar. Only the difference would be, mainly the instrumentation.
Now that triplets, the sound of triplets, I compare that to the sound of like horses galloping.
Yes.
That kind of, and then anybody who knows Iron Maiden right away, they can hear that. It's also a bit of like, there's some Led Zeppelin tunes like that, and it has this warrior spirit that immediately, as soon as you hear the triplets, get your axe, and get your shield, smear your face with blood and go,
So just to be clear for our listeners, if there's any theory nerds out there, that the triplet that I was thinking of was like a more of a, like a 6/8 kind of a thing. But like the 2 16th notes and an 8th note, the gallop, I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, that's all over like Iron Maiden, and a lot of people who use like the actual triple feels, though, like Merciful Fate and King Diamond always seem to have a lot of their songs in the with the triple meters.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we're going all over the place. I think I've been a little rude to my co-host. But Nullus, you want to jump in? I know Nullus is a Wing Chun master. Probably has a few things to say.
Can you guys hear me, by the way? I don't know. I just
Yeah.
all right. So, because I had some issues with my mic here. So before I say anything, I think it's really important for the audience to know that you need a magnetic personality if you really want to play good metal. Ha ha ha. Oh God. Okay, that's football.
Hey,
All
I
right.
like that
All
joke.
right.
Bad, so.
Poor delivery. But so what I wanted to say was, ever since I was a teenager, I've loved the mythology represented in metal music. I've always felt an organic connection to this genre as something that is uniquely a part of our heritage. And I
Totally.
strongly identify, I strongly identify with the emphasis on our heroism and camaraderie that's exemplified in metal music. So, was there a moment where you explicitly felt this connection between the music and the lore?
Oh gosh. You know, for me, a lot of that was I already mentioned that really made use of mythology.
Okay. Sorry, we lost you a little bit there. Go on.
Oh yeah, I apologize. I'm on the South Hill in Spokane now, so it's it's just a little tricky. Am I still coming through?
Yeah, you're coming through. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying to think of other groups. You know, the Rhapsody. They do a lot of that same kind of thing. There was actually a particular live performance where they actually had Christopher Lee come out and introduce the band, and of course Christopher Lee is known as Saruman in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Right.
I know there's been bands that have written about more different what do you call it, mythologies. I'm not super well read on a lot of our lore because a lot of it, I just, I spent most of my time in the church, and I'm just now getting into a lot of pagan lore. But I know that a lot of the bands that I listen to, like they'll have songs about, particularly the genre I'm into, which is like kind of horror metal. They'll have a lot of songs about like Camelot has a song about Faust, and Iced Earth has this whole album where there's like, a song about Dracula. There's a song about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A song about the Egyptian pharaoh and the Wolfman, and I mean, if you consider that stuff a part of our lore, which in a way it kind of is, Hollywoodized though it be, but as far as like the idea of a major concept album, I think I fell in love with that idea through being a Dream Theater fan.
Yeah,
they did an album called Scenes from a Memory that was like this really cool murder mystery, and just them. And also King Diamond has a bunch of albums where he tells a whole story throughout the album. And another band that's really good at that is Symphony X. They have an album called Iconoclast, and it's actually really apropos for our times because it's about resistance against a technocratic regime.
Nice. What is
Yeah.
your music? What is your music about? What do you sing about?
Well, lately I've been working on a concept album based on Jason Kuna's Prometheus Rising, which when I read it, it really spoke to me. I've tried to get into, various paganisms, whether it's like the Poetic Edda or Druidry. But when I read the Prometheus Rising, it honestly just really spoke to me. And I felt like it was a very good racial mythos for our people, a very useful one, because it emphasizes all the parts about being an effective warrior, but also about loyalty and being willing to sacrifice yourself for a greater cause. And so
I first want to commend you for that, because this is a thing I've been trying to stress among the people in the White Art Collective and artists, creators in our sphere is to use Jason's dialectic, is to use the philosophy of all the various writers and thinkers that are in our sphere. In a sense, we don't have to recreate the wheel. These are the thinkers, if depending on who you're drawn to, if it's Jonathan Bowden or, Evola, or there's so many writers in our sphere that, have done so much already. And so I strongly encourage creators to, use those resources and tie that into our culture through our arts. So what you're doing with No White Guilt's ideas is exemplary. I'm extremely happy you're doing that.
Well, right on. Well, I'm happy to be a part of it, and it really is a masterpiece in my opinion, and it deserves multiple albums to be written about it. Is what I feel. So
Does
I
he
can't
know?
recommend it more.
I'm sorry.
What's that?
Does he know that you're doing this?
Oh yeah, Jason has been just a huge help to me in so many ways. Like when I first started, I was having a real problem in the scene because a lot of I come from more of an ant-nat background, and
Okay.
because of the way I went about it, coming into nationalism through the back door, I took in all of the most extreme content first.
Mm,
Like the opposite of what most people do.
yeah.
And because of that, I forgot part of the question, but anyway,
Well, just
Jason kind of helped me through a lot of that stuff, and
okay.
he helped me realize that we're not going to be very effective against our victimizers if we're living under a bridge.
Interesting. Could you expand on that a little bit? Like what's your, I guess this kind of jumps over to the question about what's your political view of our current situation? What's your take?
Oh,
And
well,
and your advice on it as well, if you could add.
yeah. I'm not the most qualified person to give advice because I kind of messed up my own life, talking the way that I used to talk. Unfortunately, some of that stuff I still believe in some of the basic principles of like the natural order. I still believe that Ben Clausen was onto something when he talked about the natural order, and I think that I still enjoy the book Might is Right quite a bit. It's just as a philosophy of nature, it makes complete sense to me. But as far as being cunning is also good, being heroic, and sure, you treat your enemies differently than you treat your inside group, right? But
Yeah.
as far as your inside group, you still need to have an honor code. It's not just every man for himself, there are some things that really are worth dying for and giving your life for.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those would be our people, But as far as the best way to go about it, I think we can rule out bowl cut suicide missions.
No, that's off the charts. No, that's insane.
Yeah, I just don't see that ever working. And what I do see working is metapolitical strategies, like using art.
There you go. Could you maybe expand on that a bit?
Oh yeah, I'll get really nerdy. I went through a kind of an occultist kind of phase, and part of that kind of is still with me, but I used to listen to Alan Moore a bit. He's the comic book author.
Of course I know.
Yeah. So he said this thing that really stuck with me. He said that art is magic, that magic is basically the manipulation of symbols to cause a change in consciousness.
Yep.
And art is definitely, it definitely falls into that category as well. And advertisers use magic on us every day.
Oh, yeah.
They get past our critical thinking filters, and they affect how our subconscious thinks about things. They appeal to emotion, and And good art does that too. I actually, to be honest, I have a really hard time drawing the line between art and propaganda because, for one, I don't think that all propaganda is bad.
Sure.
And on the second half of that, I think that all art, if it's going to express something important, is going to be seen as propaganda, whether you want it to be or not. You have to take a stand on something in your art, or it doesn't really have any meaning. And then if you take a stand, then some person is going to say, "Oh, well, he's just making propaganda for that cause."
Right.
So,
right. Nullus and I have had this discussion, I think, in the past with some people on Imperium art. Nullus, do you have any concepts on art versus propaganda?
Well, that's an important question, and I think that we address it to a degree, or I address it to a degree in the Imperium art essay. But this, I believe, constantly evolves in terms of what we're really trying to achieve. There is a place for propaganda within our artistic expression. At the same time, I would say that not all of our artistic expressions are propagandistic. If others will always label you whatever they're going to label you. I think that from our point of view, it's an irrelevant argument what others, or let's just say your adversary, thinks of you, because the adversary is always going to find ways to paint you in a negative light. So whether or not you intend to write something that sounds propagandistic is, from that point of view, irrelevant. I think from our point of view, it's a question of how we present the message. So that's why we talk about this explicit versus implicit versus overt propagandistic expressions. I think they all have a place. I think that we shouldn't be too concerned about it, in the sense that whether or not you are politicizing your art deliberately, or you're just expressing an emotion that's around you that's political in nature. What's the difference if you really think about it? It comes out as the same messaging, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really like to like with my own art. What I have found to be the most effective is to make it less obviously political. Like I much prefer to talk about wizards and goblins and dragons and stuff like that than to talk about like globalist tyrants and whatnot. So and I think that go ahead.
I apologize. I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead and finish your point.
Oh, okay. My last thought on that is that I assume that we want to attract the best, most capable thinkers to our cause. And I think that even using things like symbolism and allegory and subtext, I think that the greater thinkers will still be able to understand what we're talking about.
That's exactly it. And that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm. That's beautifully said. I think that, I don't mean this in a sort of a negative way, but there's leaders and there's followers, and the leaders make up a very small percentage of the population, and it's a personality trait, if you will. Anyway, I feel that artists are leaders in a natural kind of way, whether they mean to be it or not, and certainly as they apply to our movement. So in the movement of white well-being, artists have a kind of a responsibility, a sort of a yoke on our shoulders to produce music that moralizes and energizes and teaches our people. And so then our people can then pass that on to their networks and impress upon other people, look, this is who we are. This is, we're being cut off from our continuity, from our true destiny, and, get involved in this culture. It's very rich. Welcome home is essentially the message. So So I just wanted to move on a little bit and try to get into finding out, how did you come to your racial awakening? This is a question we ask all our guests.
Oh, yeah. Well, in about 2015, I saw the migrant crisis happening in Europe, the forced immigration and what it was doing to the European people. And I just had this kind of epiphany, I realized that all the classical music and the Gothic architecture and the art, the sculpture, the language, all the things that I really love about European culture would cease to exist if they were replaced by another people.
Right. Right.
And
This is a thing I tell people all the time is, I tell that the parasites, when they kill the host, then they die too. It's like
yeah,
the madness of this, the madness. Of course, we know that this is an intentional genocide by a certain population that controls the world, and that's a whole other topic our audience knows about. So it's a culture war that we're involved in. But I'm sorry, continue.
Oh yeah. As far as that goes, I mean, it when I look at it, it's really kind of a short-sighted effort or endeavor that the globalists are making, because when they get rid of the people who built these advanced civilizations,
Mm-hmm.
those advanced civilizations are going to be unsustainable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often think, what would it be like if the Imperium, a sort of a white global consciousness, suddenly stopped sharing all of our technology, all of our medicine, all of our inventions, all of our services, all of our resources. If we stopped doing that, where would the rest of the world be? It's, if we
Yeah.
you think about it, think about all the foreign students going to university, basically stealing our knowledge, our education, technology, and bringing it back to their countries where now we have to compete against them. This is insane. It's totally foolish. It's suicidal, really. But
The way you said that reminded me of. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
The way you said that reminded me. It reminded me of Atlas Shrugged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where the producers just realize that they're being had and they stop producing, and everything goes to hell afterward.
Yep. I think that is a kind of a strategy we have to. I don't know if isolationism is the right term for that, but we should have a kind of a maybe some kind of exclusive approach to our resources. But yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, though. You were talking about your racial awakening.
Oh no, it's cool. After I started, reading different things. I know he's not looked upon favorably in our. I think it's kind of important to be able to distinguish the message from the messenger. And I found a lot of Jack Donovan's works to be pretty useful, as far as he has this one particular book called Becoming a Barbarian. Mm-hmm. And he outlines the philosophy and worldview of tribalism in that. And I feel that a lot of what he says in that book is really good advice. He talks about how even if you were to just try to escape the globalism and you were to try to just go to some mountain in Tibet, eventually there's going to be a parking lot with a Starbucks and a McDonald's. But what he mentions to do is to carve out little sections of your tribe within the empire, and to plant a new root, and to and start within. And the other thing he says is the weakness of the empire is that it's probably not like some grand reptilian takeover or something, but that it relies on the obedience and participation of everyone involved.
Yeah, well, the vaccine proves that for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm super worried about that.
I know people that died from it, honestly. So in my real life, so it's definitely a very heavy problem. But I want to make a quick point here. You're talking about Jack Donovan. So there's other authors and other figures in history, Uncle A, for example, that.
Oh yeah.
This and then this ties back to the what you've learned from Jason Kuna, No White Guilt, and the topic of optics. This is a really, really critical topic in our sphere. So you might as well, talk about it just a little bit. So here you said something critical. You were talking about like separating ideas from people. What I'm thinking is that we just need to refresh the ideas and kind of, we don't have to rebuild the wheel, so to speak. We can take all these ideas from these great thinkers and great leaders in the past, and then essentially, recreate them for our time and our purpose. We'll have to give names and create a dialectic for those things, because the
Sure.
left is totally brainwashed all the normies, and they it's just it's you can't have a normal conversation with people who don't even understand what fascism is, or what, if they couldn't name, say, four policies of National Socialism. How can you even have a conversation with people that are living in some kind of elementary, like, mental world? But anyway, it's good to see that you went through that process. Maybe that's an example to people in our sphere.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I totally agree that, you know, I like the idea of taking things that are useful and making use of them, and it makes a lot of sense to me, to do that. It doesn't make any sense to see a useful idea and be like, oh well, I'm not going to use that idea because so and so used it.
Yeah. Not
In
only
fact,
that.
a lot of people do that to Jason. Like they have
Exactly.
some objection about like how well put together he is or something, and then they're like, oh well, I won't use his dialectics,
It's silly.
because he's too nice or whatever. Like,
Well, just the
no,
name no
you
white,
use what works, right?
just the name No White Guilt triggers a large swath of people, and that itself is ridiculous and must be destroyed. I feel like, here's the problem that I have, is that the left does not define us. We define us, and so the middle looks to the left to understand the right, and that's insane. That's absurd. So we on the right have to have a much, much stronger engagement with the middle, and we have to be able to explain to them who we are, what we're about. And I agree with Jason in the sense that we need a new dialectic for that, but I also think
Yeah,
we must scaffold it off of the leaders of the past. You see, like for example, we had Norm Apollo on the show, and he doesn't call, like, his name for fascism is familialism, which is a hard thing to say, but think about it. It's
makes
it's a,
sense.
a political philosophy that is totally built around preserving the family, familialism. That's good
Yeah,
dialectic. That's good dialectic right there. So
yeah.
anyway, yeah, this I don't know if did Nullus, do you want to jump in a little bit on this?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to address the argument where you were talking about earlier that some might make an argument against us, that they would say, well, not all innovations and inventions were created in the West, nor were all of these developments created by people of European descent. While this
Yeah.
argument, while this argument that we didn't invent everything could be made, we must clarify that our people created the environment and the circumstances where innovation and positive development could thrive. So even if some other guy created it, he would not have been able to create it had we have not established the circumstances and environment for him to flourish. And this is also arguably a double-edged sword, because we could also argue that we've become the victims of our own success. And so we have to be very
Yeah.
careful on how we address this. It's a difficult question. I would say obviously that for the most part, if you look at it in the aggregate, then we were the movers and shakers of innovation and development, and much again to our own demise in a way. And so that's where we have to find these balances that we're all striving toward. And I just want to circle back. We'll talk about the essay later, but I just wanted to make just 3 points here. That controlling our surrounding, in at least according to the Imperium essay, is expressed through the concept of cognitive dominance, understanding your surroundings and keeping a cool head no matter what and how chaotic everything is around you. And controlling our emotions is expressed through the warrior poet, because we have to be able to express the full spectrum of our emotions. We can't just limit it to a certain level of artistic expression, because if we do that, we're denying ourselves that full expression. We're bottling up emotion, and if we bottle up emotion, then that's not going to disappear. So we have to find creative ways to do that in a balanced manner, and we should not shy away from expressing who we are and how we want to express ourselves. And just another point on the familial. If you look at the word, genetic, right? That's from the word gens. This is family. Tribes were family. You go back long enough in time, tribes were based on strong familial bonds. So what is nationalism, right? Nationalism is a higher level expression of the family. And if you understand it in that context, then it becomes a lot different. It's not an ism anymore. And that's really what I try to emphasize with, and I say, we don't have to look at the political expression. That's a social construct that we can argue about how we want to govern ourselves. That's one thing. But understanding the organic understanding of who we are, right? Within that ethnos, within that gens, within that family, right? That's an important foundation before we move to the organization aspect. Sorry, I just went off a little bit on a tangent, but there was quite a bit that was said.
It's quite good.
That was well said. Yeah, I actually, that made me think of something else too. I really like the I guess it's not quite a parallel, but the connection you're making between, the gens and nationalism and familialism and fascism. And I guess I do the same thing. The way I think of it is really kind of it's kind of a meathead working class kind of way to think of it. But I think of it as the natural order. I think it's really natural for people to want to be around other people who look and act like them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's natural to want to take care of your own. And I think a lot of these, where we're kind of getting in trouble, is how unnatural things have gotten. And it's weird for me because I'm an electric guitar player and I love technology. I love being able to release music on the internet and being able to use recording software and whatnot. But at the same time, I do also feel like at times that we've passed the point of balance, or like the golden ratio with our use of technology. And I'll just explain a little bit of why I feel that way. I had a job for a couple weeks not too long ago at Amazon, and it literally felt like working in a George Orwell novel.
Yeah.
There was like constant, Big Brother is constantly watching you through the cameras. There's COVID hall monitors. When you stand in line at Human Resources, it feels like you're standing in a communist bread line, and you have no control over your schedule.
A little bit evil.
And and so like it. Ironically, around the time that I was working there is when I was listening to Ted Kaczynski's essay on technological life and whatnot. And it just really struck me that I think technology is a net good in ways if it's used in a way that harmonizes with and respects nature. But I think the problem is that it's been used to over-civilize us, maybe, and to try and bring about utopian conditions. And I just don't think nature is meant to be utopian.
That's an interesting point you made. Over-civilize us. I think that's a really, really good term, because technology is what? It's a tool. So you can have a hammer. A hammer is technology. A saw is technology. Sawzall machine is a technology, right? So any of these things are tools meant to help us become more civilized, and they all have their usefulness, and there's nothing wrong with it. The problems start when we are dependent on these technologies.
Yeah.
And the problems start when these technologies start to dominate us as opposed to us mastering the technology. And I think that's where we're losing ourselves somehow.
Mhm. Luke, your next concept album, Over Civilized. There you go.
Yeah, over civilized.
You know,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah,
Great.
it's I really feel strongly about that issue because just the way, like, I guess I feel like if our people were the ones who were in charge of all this
Yeah.
technocracy, I'd probably be fine with it
Yeah.
because
We know who
yeah, but
controls it, and we know what they're using it. They're currently right now they're trying to turn America into a giant welfare state. We're going to give you money
yeah,
and everything. See, it's this. I hate to repeat things that what people already know, but it's so frustrating to be on this, to be the frog in the slow boil, and to say like we got to get out of here. And not only that, why don't we create this ourselves? And it seems like it's a financial issue, like
Right.
yeah,
we need our own billionaires, we need our own billionaire class. But in my recent studies on Freemasonry, you cannot be a billionaire unless you're part of the Freemason, like satanic cult. Otherwise, you and your family get whacked or something. It's not a lot. They are the top elite. They're beyond the law. So they can murder people and do anything they want at will. And
You,
so
yeah,
yeah,
you know,
we have to somehow figure out, possibly through the magic of art, how to change the consciousness. You see, because
yeah,
in the end, they're after our souls. It's not just our
well,
money and our making us vote a certain way or something. It's our very souls, and they're crushing it. So
well,
anyway,
yeah,
go ahead.
Donald,
No,
I just wanted to add to this that the primary question for me is revolves around morals and ethics, and we've lost that. Rather, the morals and ethics that we've believed in for eons, whether that is going back to the ancient Greeks, the Stoics, even Christianity, all throughout our European history, there was a very strong emphasis on morals and ethics. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone throughout European history was morally sound or ethically pure. That's not the issue. The issue is that these questions were always paramount. It was always raised. It was always, well, wait a second, before we do this, what are the moral or ethical implications here? And
mm,
today, what I see is a first of all, they twisted the whole concept of our or all of our morals and all of our ethics have been twisted,
mhm,
inverted, and deconstructed. And so now, when you have someone moralizing, what they're really doing is pushing a political agenda as opposed to
right.
moralizing for the sake of asking that important question.
Mhm.
And so, for us as artists, I think that we must at least incorporate a strong element of morals and ethics in the work we're doing, but in a way where we don't wag that moralizing finger at people, because you have to do that in a way where they come to this conclusion by themselves through the art that we're presenting. I hope that made sense.
Beautiful.
yeah. I- yeah, I think so too. Well said. I wanted to add something to that. And this is just my super strong, so hard opinion. But I think part of the problem with these moral issues is that we've been convinced to take up a universal morality where we treat our enemies as good as we treat our own. And I
Mhm.
don't think that's natural. I think that's actually very unnatural. And I think that's a way that evil has used to nerf us, to get back to my earlier analogy.
Yes.
Uh, we should not be treating these tyrants
Yeah.
who want to vaccinate us to death like they are looking out for our best interests. We should not be treating enemies like they're our in group.
Right. Well, that's when
That's
you're commodifying everything, then you're also commodifying morality.
So
yeah,
this hits a very difficult paradox, and that is, if we're going to be moral, what is the morality that we should have towards our enemies who are trying to destroy us?
The
Go ahead,
same
that was
morality that a
indulgence.
spider has toward a fly.
Well, that's how they treat us. I mean, it, it's a profound, it's actually a very sublime topic in some ways, because morality, it shapes your soul in some regard, your spirit. If you're if you kind of indulge in all kinds of egoic, negative, self-centered, ways of being, and you just are degenerate, you do anything you want to anybody, etc., and don't care, then you have a very rotten and sick soul, right? Whereas
Sure, yeah.
we have to think like, okay, we want to have healthy souls, enlightened souls, loving souls, strong souls. I should say spirits. That's possibly the better term for this. But then when you look at the the cabal of different ethnic, or rather races around us, that are first going to suck us dry and then kill us for pleasure, that's how do we treat them? Obviously, I think the obvious answer is obviously with a warrior spirit, because we're saving ourselves and our families and our heritage, our future, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is tricky stuff. It's tricky ground we're on here.
Yeah.
Donald, I'll make this even more difficult for you. How do you treat your own relatives, your own cousins, your own brothers, who are completely opposed to everything that you represent, and they represent something that is basically serving the interests of your enemies? What do you do?
The gatekeepers, right.
So how do you handle that morally?
Well, I have a
right? So,
different answer for that, but I wanted to get Luke's take on this for starters.
Oh, well, I guess, I don't think we have the luxury of treating our enemies with any compassion.
Yes.
I'm a proponent of Vlad nationalism, and when it comes to our enemies, and it's really sad. It tears me up to say this, but there's a reason that treason is considered a capital offense worthy of the death penalty.
You're right. You're very right. You're very right.
Because no nation can exist if we allow that to happen.
We mentioned this, Donald, about traitors, that we need to speak up about that, and I want to emphasize that we do need to speak up about this.
We're gonna need a lot of rope.
I don't know how you mean. How do you mean that?
Well, I'm gonna stop on. I won't go any farther with that. But Vlad nationalism. I need a T-shirt of that. That could actually be a song within your next concept album, Luke.
Yeah, it's not about violence. It's just about lawn decorations.
Yes, naturally. In Minecraft.
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the rope you can use in Minecraft. It's so useful. Anyway, it's see, this
We're
is
just kidding around, right?
Yeah. We're kidding around. But I mean, we have legitimate frustrations, and we're human beings, and we have, we should be able to voice these things in some kind of a constructive way. Right. There's a fine line sometimes, but joking and reality, sometimes it's a little blurry, I guess. But anyway, we're obviously extremely intensely against violence. We're intensely against any kind of violence of any kind, from our side or the other side. That is not the way, and we profoundly encourage everyone in our sphere to only do positive things and to find the best positive resources we have to come up with answers to, and I do honestly believe that. I mean, I'm if you listen to this whole show, I'm always interested in kind of the spiritual dimension of our growth movement and these sorts of things. So it's I think that we have our own little jokes that we do privately, but then publicly we kind of have to be more careful about how we talk and stuff like that. So, but I wanted to segue.
This is where I have
go ahead.
I have a hard time with that issue because I really strongly believe in the natural order.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that nature is ever going to evolve past violence.
Mm-hmm.
Violence is what they use to keep us from being violent.
Well, whoa, that was heavy. That one, you can't beat that with a baseball bat. Um, Sorry, I don't know where I'm
Well,
going
what
with
was
these
that?
violent
What was
jokes.
that quote? What was that quote from? What was that quote from Gladiator? People should know when they're conquered.
Wow, gosh.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's true too, because we are conquered.
Well,
So
that's yeah, but yet we're sort of like like seduced into it, or we're sort of drugged by it. Like, oh, don't pay attention to the fact that your country is being destroyed. Go to and shop at Amazon and shop
mm,
at Walmart and get a new tattoo and do this designer drug, and et cetera, et cetera. It's
yep,
we have to snap out of that in the most like immediate way. You know.
yes.
Yeah.
But and I this ties back into music. I think music is culture. Music is as you say magic in a sense. So I wanted to go a little deeper on that topic because that is the tool that we're using. We're artists, musicians, poets, thinkers. We're not. I mean, there's a level of warrior within us, absolutely, but in a sense, we need to call the troops or, I'm using all these violent things. I can't get away from the war analogies in this podcast. But what is the magic of art, and or how is it that we could utilize art? Like maybe you could open that topic up a bit more.
Oh, yeah. Well, art causes changes in consciousness, and it's obvious that it works because that's how our victimizers got us to turn our own weapons against ourselves.
Hmm. So your music, how would you describe the kind of the magic of your music? What's the intent?
Oh, I guess what I really am searching for is just to recreate a love of the European biospirit, to an appreciation, a love, a loyalty toward, and at the same time also doing it in a way that my music is probably marketed more toward men than toward women,
Sure.
because it's metal, and I just think it's really good, positive music for men because it has that militaristic warrior spirit within it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, I'm a hopeless romantic too, and I love a lot of the beautiful ballads and everything. I'm a sucker for the '80s power ballad and all that.
Sure.
But most of it for me is probably music about heroism and courage and
Yeah.
boldness and
And we fight a war every day in just simple ways, how we talk to our friends and family and coworkers, and having the courage to be explicit about white self-interest, be explicit about, the vaccine or globalism or white lives matter. There's a movement now that, at first I thought it was just contrarian, but the movement is to draw attention to the enormously high uh, crime rate and murder rate for blacks on whites. And this is something that Nullus and I spoke about a little bit recently, and it's something that has to get more in the front. It has to be in the mainstream news. How many white people are victim of racial attacks, for example. And so there needs to be courage that I think comes from, things like music and art and culture. So we have to create a culture of courage. Let's put it that way.
yeah, I totally think that that's a huge thing of a huge goal for me for my own music is to promote that kind of courage.
Mm, good, good. I definitely feel it. It's very, very much there. Also has a literary quality to it. I feel very much like you're a good storyteller in a way that there's a way that you deliver the story that has a kind of drama to it. So I urge people to check out your music. Of course, the link will be below. Let's segue into the Imperium art essay. We didn't want to keep you for too long on this show, so let's
Sure,
go ahead
yeah.
with that. What were your thoughts?
Well, I actually, the main thing that it made me think about when I read it was the difference between kind of modern degenerate art
Hmm.
and the traditional art that has classical art values, I suppose you would say.
Okay.
And what it, you know, my thought is that, and I come at this from kind of two different angles because, for one, I love classical music, but then I also love like the rebellion of distorted guitars
Yeah.
and loud drums and stuff.
Nice.
So, but I do really still feel that there's like, I just really feel that art should be, if it's going to be constructive art meant to actually build us up rather than dumb us down and tear us down, I really do feel that it should have certain qualities. It should be, it should take skill to create it.
For sure. No doubt. And
You know,
you've got truckloads of that, my man.
oh, thanks. But to me, like what they're trying to do with the modern art, they're trying to devalue art and make it meaningless by
You're right.
trying to say that, mediocre or badly produced art is just as good as classical art.
Or
It's like
totally
saying that
meaningless.
cowardice is just as good as courage,
Yeah,
or obesity is just as good as fitness, and
that's right.
and
That's right.
it's total falsehood, and it's not natural for people to think that way. And I guess the point of my art that I want to do, and also I think kind of what Nullus is getting at with the Imperium art essay is that art shouldn't be egalitarian. It shouldn't like flatten everything to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
It should be regal and majestic, and just like nature is. Nature is a hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
The greater force dominates the less force. The predator dominates the prey, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Well, courage is always going to be better than cowardice, and beauty is always going to be better than ugliness. And I think that when you have like a painting or a song that is properly created and constructed, I think that it shows that hierarchy, and it shows it shows beauty, and it shows majesty and complexity, for that matter. Why would someone want to spend their money on something that doesn't have any worth, that just some you put an orangutan in a cage and put his fingers in some paint, and why would you want to spend money for that when you can get the Michelangelo or something? Why would you want to listen to Kurt Cobain play guitar if you can listen to Joe Satriani?
Yeah. Huge difference.
I'm just saying.
No,
I mean,
no, you're right about that. I'm hearing that. Yeah. It's weird because like the Kurt Cobain, I I like Kurt Cobain, but I recognize it as like music for emotional 15-year-olds. And we were
Yeah.
all 15 at one time, we were all 15 at one time and we had that angst. But you have to.
Ironically, when I was 15 is when I started listening to Joe Satriani.
Well, I was listening to King Crimson and stuff at that age. I mean, it was
Oh,
into
hell yeah. Oh,
intense
yeah.
prog rock. I was hardcore into philosophy and stuff. But the average person, sorry, I'm not average. But anyway, the average person, I went through that too. I had angst, we all do. But it's just that you can't turn that into your home. You don't like build your foundation there. You move on. So I'm feeling that. And these are brilliant and beautiful points. They're very insightful. See, I think you need to get more into the dialogue because you have great insights. You're very, very genuine. And I think more of this kind of like warrior artist spirit needs to be injected into our movement more. So once again, I urge the audience to go to Imminent Reign. The link is below. Enjoy the music and share. Subscribe and share. So Nullus, did you want to chime in at all?
Just a quick comment on this, just to say that especially in music and in the movies, we have less genuine creators, and now, as opposed to more entertainers who simply play or just mimic products that have been created in corporate boardrooms. I think that what we're really missing today are those genuine craftsmen who not only present the music but also create the music. And I think that that's what we in the White Art Collective are offering everyone, is something very unique in that sense. Everything that we're doing is very down to earth, and I think that that's something that people should really check out and appreciate.
I
Beautiful.
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Beautifully said. Well, are there any closing thoughts then, Luke? Would you like to, let people know how they can find you?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm not very good about using social media, but I do check my YouTube quite a bit. I'm often you could find me lurking in the streams of, Jason, No White Guilt, and For Null, and Modernity Leave. And I do have like a YouTube channel. I'm going to be doing a lot more with that stuff. I'm getting real serious and really focused now.
Very good.
About Imminent Reign. And so I will be doing more. I have a Facebook, but I don't have an Imminent Reign page set up just yet. I'll be doing that pretty shortly. But I noticed that not a lot of people are on Facebook in our circles, probably because Facebook does not allow you to use a pseudonym.
It's Facebook is just for cocks now. It's completely cucked out. It's totally, it's like the New World Order. Like, you will conform or we will crush you. I'm banned from Facebook. I've had 5 accounts and they all, got crushed, but that's another story. Anyway,
it's crazy. I can't comment on there at all. I can't say anything meaningful on that platform.
Well,
I'm going to try and use, I'll try and use Twitter a little bit more, especially since I notice more of our folks are on there.
For sure. Beautiful. Nullus, any closing thoughts?
No, just wanted to thank Luke for being on the show, and so hard.
So hard. Oh, yeah. Curva Kemeni.
Awesome.
I'm going to say this. It's Kurva Kemény. And for anyone who speaks Hungarian,
yeah.
I was cursing, so just to let everybody know. So, yeah, Mama P, I'm putting that in the curse jar there.
Our friend,
I want to sample that and put it in a song.
There you go. Our friend Full Moon Ancestry would love to have you on the show. He speaks Hungarian and he's a hardcore heavy metal head. So we'll have to connect you with Full Moon Ancestry.
Yeah, I love that dude. I've been meaning to be on his show, and he's been talking to me, and I was supposed to go on there once, and I totally flaked out on him, and I need to get back in touch with him. So, I definitely would want to do that. He's a sweet dude.
Yeah, make it so.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. We thank everybody in the audience for spending this time with us. Please do follow the links below, subscribe, share, comment. Get involved in our culture, in our community. Get your networks involved. This doesn't mean anything if nobody hears it. So you have to get the message out. You are just as much a part of the Imperium Project as the people on this show. We love you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.